You saw a couple of things that are norms for virtual meetings. In general, we're asking that you keep cameras on so that you can interact. We're asking that you utilize the chat if you have questions. Feel free, we're not a huge group, and so if you do have questions that you want to share with the rest of the group verbally, you can raise your hand if it's not a good time, or just unmute yourself or share if it does feel like a good time. As you can see, we are recording this session. Our goal is to be able to share as much information as possible, take and answer as many questions as possible in person. While we have folks virtually, we're offering this session right now and tomorrow morning as well. And then we will share out the recording, both for folks who were not able to attend and if anyone would like to review any of the pieces of information. So in addition to sharing the recording, we'll also be sharing the slides that you see. Thank you for going back to the best practices slides. I think I remembered everything. The only other piece that I would say is we have that bullet that says leave your camera on if possible, but also self-care is really important as well. If you need to have some time where you're not on camera, totally fine. If you need to step away and use the restroom, grab a drink of water, whatever you need to do, totally fine. As you will see on the agenda, we also did build in a stretch break halfway through so that you'll have a chance to do that. So to walk through the agenda really quick, we are going to start with introductions of our staff members to make sure that you know who you are getting emails from, who you are getting questions and requests and all of these different things from. We'll give you a little bit of context for our roles. Hopefully we are all fairly familiar folks to you, but since not everyone has as much experience working with young audiences, we will share that information again. We'll go through some mission moments, talk a little bit about our summer programming this year, because that was a really unique thing for us, and I believe for many of you to get to do so much summer programming this year. The school year is constantly changing with its expectations and capacities and of schools and of students, so we'll share what we know about school plans and about vaccinations and about in-person versus virtual with you all. We will talk through your contract documents, the actual documents that you use to work with schools. And Josephine will be sharing any changes that have been made to those documents for this year and holding some time for questions about those, because we know that that's always a big area of questions. We'll have a little break. We'll talk a little bit more about the vaccine requirement that we put into place, how we came to that decision, and what we've heard from schools around that. We'll share a little bit of information about how we expect to gather this year virtually and what that looks like for us, though we know that we will continue to get more information as we move into the year. We'll talk a little bit about the fact that we shared our organization's equity statement with you all earlier this year, and asked you to kind of sign off on that, give you a little context, and then holding a little bit of time at the end for questions as well. So as we've said in a couple of the emails and the invitations, this kind of beginning of the year kickoff is just a time for us to give you a lot of the information about things we've been thinking about. You all get to see some of the behind the scenes work that we are always doing to stay in contact with schools and update our practices and our knowledge and our connection points with schools. But our goal is that this can be a time that is dedicated to us sharing some information, answering questions, and then also just to be able to see each other. So in a different year, in an in-person year, it would also be able to include a little bit more social time. So we'll have to find that in other ways this year, unfortunately. But to kick off, introductions. I'm going to start because I've got the mic, and then I'll pass it on. I'm going to share my name, my pronouns, and my role with young audiences with a sentence about what that means. And I'll also share my art form because that is something that we have asked for you to do. We are also asking, in addition to staff introductions that are going to be out loud, we're asking for you to do some introductions in the chat while this is happening. So the 3 bullet points that you see on the side are the information that we're hoping to hear from you, so that you can put a name and a face together. You can scroll through and see who is sharing that information. But to start my introduction, my name is Christy Riedel. I am the programs director from Young Audiences. I just celebrated 6 years with Young Audiences, which is wild, especially because it feels like the last 2 years kind of don't count because time doesn't make any sense anymore. But I have been in the role of programs director for about half of that time, a little more than half of that time, and was in the role of community engagement manager before that. In this current role, well, first off, my pronouns are she, her. In this current role, I get to work with a great staff of programs team members to help make all of these behind the scenes things happen. So all of these things that you are hearing us talk about today, in addition to some other programs that are not as related to our Artists in Schools programs. We do some additional work as well. My art form when I am actually making it has been a lot of different things, but in general, I do a lot with ceramics work. I do some other with visual arts. I've done some music in my life. I've done a very small amount of theater. I like dancing. I like it all. It's all good stuff, but more often than not, I'm doing visual arts. So to pass it off to a fellow staff member, Coco, do you want to take us away?
Hi, I'm Coco. I am the community engagement manager with Young Audiences. My pronouns are she, her. I manage our newly named Fun for the Arts program, which helps schools fundraise for arts at their school, which is now a dance-a-thon. And then I also help schools make connections with your programs to book your programs. And my art form, I am a visual artist, so lots of stuff in there, mosaics, mixed media, murals, bookmaking, printmaking. I could go on, photography. I'll pass it over to Josephine.
Hi everyone, I'm Josephine Cooper. I am she, her, the Senior Program Operations Manager here at Audiences. That means that you will hear from me about school requests. You'll hear from me about a number of things, about the great stuff that you guys do. If you ever want to put together some marketing for yourselves, I'm also the master of our database, so I can help you with mailing lists and coming up with a list of a good amount of names that you want to get in touch with. Not currently really doing the art thing, more focused on the arts administration thing, but in my former life, I have a degree in vocal performance, classical vocal performance. That was my former life as a singer. I will pass it along to Kim.
Hi, Kim Stralchin. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the director for the Right Brain Initiative, so supporting schools and artists who are doing right brain programming. And I would say my art form is my hobby, which is fused glass. And I'm going to pass it to Ryan.
Okay, hello, my name is Ryan Higa, and I am an arts integration coach with the Right Brain Initiative. My pronouns are he, him, and I guess looking at our lineup today, I've met and worked with most of you, which I've super enjoyed, but also looking forward to meeting the rest of you in some capacity as we move forward. And my primary art form is visual arts. And I think I shall pass it to Lauren.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lauren Jost. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the new executive director here at Young Audiences. Although not so new anymore, it's about 5 months in, so it's zooming along. I am a theater artist by background and ran a theater company that made performances for 0 to 5-year-olds called Spellbound Theater in New York for the last 10 years. From the Pacific Northwest originally, and really happy to be back here with family. And I'm giving a slightly extended introduction, but I'll make it brief. I love this part of my job because I worked as a teaching artist for about 20 years, still do when I'm allowed. And I was on the board of the Association of Teaching Artists, which is now the Teaching Artists Guild, which is a national advocacy organization. So this is a community that I have a lot of love for, and I'm so pleased to be welcomed into it. And I'm going to pass it to Tony.
Hi, I'm Tony Femler. I'm a professional development manager at Young Audiences and working here half-time. I use pronouns he, him, and I also work as an artist and teaching artist separately, and I work primarily in mask theater and puppetry. Did we make it through all this stuff?
I think so. And I'm going to steal the mic back for two other small elements before we move on to our next piece. One is that you do not see Maya here today, and Maya has let me know that it's okay to share with you all that she has been on family leave supporting one of her family members through some difficult times through this past month. So thank you all for your patience as we figure out how to cover the great amount of work that she has done in supporting you all in your work. But I am mentioning that out loud today so that you know that all of these faces that you see here can also be supports to you. So if you have sent Maya an email and you have not heard back from her, please feel free to reach out to any one of us. I am happy to kind of be an air traffic controller to help you know where your question can be best answered or how you can best get support. But we'll send her good vibes as she is working with her family members. And my other personal plug is that I will be out on maternity leave starting in December for about 4 months. And so I will be welcoming my first child, a little boy, in December, and we're very excited about that. So we're going to have a new maker coming into the world very soon. I'll be looking forward to a lot of like young kid art project ideas because that's what I like to do. It's very exciting. And, you know, lots of good music options as well. All right, so as you saw in the agenda, our next piece of information, our next section in the agenda is our mission moment. So I'll pass it to Ryan, who's going to lead us through that.
All right, thank you, Christy. I think we'll very briefly go over mission moments. A lot of you folks this summer have participated in some of the YA residencies, camps, and other activities. Yeah, just a few quick numbers. We were able to reach and connect with 6,000 students. We worked in 42 sites in 5 different school districts, 363 classroom residencies, and 50 performances. My personal experience over the summer was working alongside Maya as site administrators at our Da Vinci Middle School camp, working with PPS. And there's actually a couple of you here who worked with us during that time. And I just wanted to share actually a couple of things. One was the experience was awesome because we were able to, as site administrators, we were able to work alongside both, like all of the, students. We got interaction with parents and guardians, along with the teaching artists, as well as the school staff, the facility staff, which for me personally, in my capacity, I've never been able to do that with, to engage with all of those folks simultaneously and to be able to understand the relationship between them. So that was super awesome. And I guess one story that I would like to share with everybody about that was something that I didn't expect, but it was awesome. At the end of the first week, which was a very trying week because it was something new to us and we were kind of inventing the wheel as we rolled down the hill. At the end of the week, I overheard 2 of the teen counselors that we worked with, and they were mentioning how one of them said, "Oh, that's kind of sad because I'll never see blank again. I just realized I'm never going to see them again. And do you think that they'll remember me?" And the other counselor that they were talking to looked over them and said, "I think so because I remember my camp counselors when I was a kid." And that the other, the first counselor was like, "Oh, okay, cool. That's good. I wouldn't want them to forget me." And just hearing that interaction, especially after that difficult week that we had, hearing them say that made me feel really good, and it kind of helped buoy my spirits throughout the rest of the camp. So yeah, so those are my shared moments during our summertime. And I'll return it to Tony to continue.
Thanks. We're now going to kind of have a little time to reflect a bit in some breakout rooms. And it would be helpful if you give us a sense of whether it was for us or someone else. If you taught this summer, go to rename, and you can find that by either hovering over your picture and finding that little ellipsis, clicking on it, finding rename, and you can add a 1 to the front of your name if you taught this summer. And if you didn't, you can put a 2 in front of your name. And we're just going to try and get a nice mixed group for everyone to kind of chat and share some of their experiences, teaching or otherwise. And now I'm going to put you into breakout rooms based on some of that, and that'll take me just a moment. So if someone else wants to, hum a few bars.
Tony, can you remind us how much time we will have in these rooms?
Yeah, we'll have about 9 minutes. So you'll have about 4 people in each room, or we can maybe make that a little bit smaller.
And I'm noticing a couple people are putting it in the chat. If you can actually use the rename function under the participants tab, or you can hover over your name and rename. That way Tony can look at all of the names at once to be able to put people in breakout rooms.
And it can be if you did any teaching this summer, it doesn't have to be specifically a YA program.
I can vamp while Tony's getting to put these into groups. Both of the pictures that were here were a couple of sites that Kim and I got to go visit. I was so excited to finally be able to go in and see some in-person work. And, as a teaching artist myself, hadn't been in a classroom for over a year at that point. So it was really heartwarming to get to see how much joy the students had to be engaging and singing and making music and banging on drums, and also how much joy all of the teachers and administrators had. They all were glowing at watching their kids playing and having fun and making music together. It was really wonderful.
We're all almost there.
I'm gonna keep
hey,
vamping.
it's like most
See
of
Mo
you-
there. He made a song. It was about a car drive. It was really fun.
Sounds like it looks like a good number of you did do some teaching this year. So we are going to, in just a moment, open those rooms and we'll be ready to go. Let's see. All right, here we go.
Tony, can you give me a thumbs up when we've got everyone back and ready?
I think we're good.
Okay. So this is the part where we'll talk a little bit about what we're hearing from schools, and then we'll get into a little bit about sort of just COVID protocols. The image that is on your screen is what the Oregon Department of Health, Oregon Department of Education and Oregon Health Authority have put out. They're calling it the Swiss cheese model. And it's really about all the layers of protection to protect a student, to allow a student to still be in person and on site at a school. And so you'll see, right, they're just hoping that each one of these things there's nothing out of the ordinary on this image that you haven't already heard or been doing the last 20 months yourself. We want you to know that school districts are talking about services this year. So that's the good news. And everyone we've talked to has really been in communication with us about in-person programming. I will say a number of those have been, they're talking about winter and spring because they're still just trying to get their feet under them and understand what school is going to totally look like. But I've already had schools reaching out about scheduling their spring work because they also understand that they're all going to want winter and spring work. And so especially for those right brain schools, they know how that can get tricky to find the artists that you're looking for the time you want. I know that this will not pertain to all of you, but want to give you a right brain update about schools we're servicing. And I don't want you to panic. We had been serving 8 school districts. Last year, we served 4 school districts, and a number of them took a pause, trying to figure out what to do during the pandemic. This school year, we have 5 school districts. All of those have indicated that they want in-service programming. The North Clackamas and Reynolds School District are both on pause. Reynolds is working on a master arts plan for their entire school district. And so that's why they are pausing. North Clackamas couldn't wrap their mind around planning in the spring. There was just so much going on with hybrid learning in spring and preparation for summer that they decided that pause was the easiest thing for them to do. Portland Public is actually graduating from Right Brain. They have, over the course of the last dozen years working with Right Brain, when we first started with them, they had one arts TOSA, Kristen Brayson. They now have an entire department and a master arts plan, and they've been able to integrate art into their interdisciplinary with their other departments. And so they feel like they've graduated from Right Brain because their visual arts, musical arts, performing and theater arts, TOSAs are all working with their department chairs in other academic areas. And so their need for Right Brain to teach their teachers arts integration has kind of evaporated. They have enough staff on hand to do that. They are still interested in in-person programming with the YA roster in some capacity, and that will look more like traditional residencies because they still have a great value for their students interacting with the professional artists in their community. But it won't necessarily be arts integration programming. And then I want to tell you about the new schools that are joining the Right Brain Initiative. As some of you may have heard, our coach, Rachel Good-Loomis, is now the principal of both CAPS and Corbett Middle School in the Corbett School District. And the Corbett Middle School will be joining our program. So we'll be serving all K-8 students in Corbett. And they're going to jump in feet first. They're ready to serve all students and just get going. The second school that's joining us is at Fallady Ridge, which is the new elementary school in North Plains. They're part of the Hillsborough School District. And then the third one is a really exciting new opportunity for us. It's Frontier Charter Academy. They are an online school that serve K-12 students throughout Oregon. Their teachers are all throughout Oregon. The majority of them are in the Willamette Valley. They will be serving their K-8 students with Right Brain residencies and their high school students with artist workshops. What will be different and unique is it's an online academy. So their programming will look like synchronous live streaming in a Zoom classroom or potentially pre-recorded videos. Their preference is for synchronous Zoom classrooms. They're really excited to get started. They have been wanting to be a part of Right Brain for several years. And we honestly just didn't know how to do online school when they first asked, and now we do. And so for those of you, I've let them know as they're looking at the Right Brain roster that if they're interested in artists who doesn't currently list virtual programming, we will at least reach out to you to see with coaching if you would want to add virtual programming. Tony, next slide. This one is sort of the nitty gritty of what teaching in a pandemic is like. This image is just to remind you that this is what schools are using, and some of you experienced this summer. And it's the guidelines around quarantining and who does and does not need to quarantine if they come in contact and what is considered close contact. And so a couple of things that we want you to know here. As you saw in summer, it's bound to happen at schools. It's already happening, right, where classes are being delayed due to quarantine. And so our number one advice to you is plan, plan, plan. When you have a planning meeting with a school, pretend it's snow season. You got to have a backup plan for what are you going to do when something happens at that school, whether that's going to be you're going to live stream to students who are home. You're going to make a pre-recorded video that they can either do in the classroom or at home, or you're going to reschedule for another time. I think for those early residencies, you'll have the opportunity to reschedule for another time. But if they have something happen in May, you're not all going to be able to reschedule. So really planning out with teachers in your planning meetings about what you're going to do if there needs to be a change. School districts have not all worked out the details of how they're managing their vaccine requirements. So while they are required, they all have not indicated whether or not you must carry your vaccine card with you. So I'm just encouraging you all, keep it with you. You may be asked for it as well as with your badge when you go to check into a school. And if you're curious, if you're a data nerd, you can look every week. Every school district is indicating what their COVID status are, what cases they have, how many students are at home, how many teachers are at home. If we notice anything that's really big that's impacting a whole district, we'll be sure to share those in TA updates. Tony, do I have time in this section to take questions here, or would you like me to take questions later?
Just to let you know, we're going to talk about, after this, we're going to talk about one more thing, and then we'll have a breakout room where we have time for questions. And,
Perfect. Let's do that. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to pass it to Josephine then for the next section.
All right, everybody's favorite topic, contracts. Okay, so there are 3 big changes to the contract this year. The first one I'll talk about is actually not pictured here because when I tried to put it in, it really got too small. But we're all aware that there is a page in the contract where you have all your pricing and you filled out all of the pricing stuff. The change this year is that if your program is offered as both a in-person and a virtual program, you will see both of those options on your pricing page. So depending on what you're planning, you'll fill out one or the other section. And of course, if your program doesn't offer one or the other, I'll remove it before I create it for you, so it won't be too cluttered. will see both if you can offer both. So the first one pictured here, just like Kim was saying, we really want you to plan, plan, plan. So there is this new section where you can say what your planned program delivery is, whether you're wanting to plan for in-person or virtual first. And then there is a box where you can make your plan and include it here as to what the plan is if you have a COVID exposure. And so that might depend on a lot of things. It could depend on the time of year, as Kim was saying. It could depend on whether the program has already started and the COVID exposure happens. If it hasn't started at all, like that, you know, so you could write here that if the program hasn't started, you're going to go ahead and move it, stick with in person, move it to another time of the year. Or your plan could be if you've had the first 1 and 2 sessions, and then you get a COVID exposure, you're going to finish up online. So whatever the plan is that works for you and the teachers, you can just write it out here. The third section here is for reporting any classroom or school-wide policies about social distancing, materials and equipment sharing, anything that's COVID related that you want to be sure that everybody's agreeing upon. Put that there. Let's see. So then there are 2 sections that haven't changed, but just wanted to remind you. So the first one of those is the little thing about the relationship between you and the school and the insurance stuff. So just to remind you, as it says in your artist agreement, you're not covered basically. So as this says, you'll want to have your own insurance to adequately cover your work. We have been seeing an uptick in schools ask for this information. So I believe Coco and I are going to try to suss that out with schools about whether they're going to be asking for that earlier in the process. But just be aware that it's something that you might be asked for. And then next slide, please. Just a reminder, back to the pricing page of your contract. We'll all remember that like your sessions of planning are at the top, then there's your fixed costs, and then at the bottom there's estimated costs. And so basically want to remind people that estimated costs should really be used rarely, if at all possible. So it's really, you've got a flow chart here, but it's really if you need to be paid for something before the program begins, before you would have your first official pay date for the program, then definitely put it in estimated costs. Or if you're planning way ahead of time and you think that your actual costs are just going to be vastly different from what they actually are. So we're talking like hundreds of dollars that you don't want to overcharge the school if it ends up being less. But yeah, I would say the major part is if you are planning, and it's usually for visual artists, quite frankly, if you're planning a huge visual arts program, you have to buy a lot of materials. We don't want you to have to pay out of pocket for those and then wait for after the program starts. We can pay you for that before the program starts. So go ahead and shove all of those into the estimated costs, and you can even turn in that actual cost invoice, that one-sheeter thing, right away, so we can get that money out to you. But otherwise, just put it in your fixed costs. It's less paperwork for you. It's less time for everybody. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to ask me one-on-one, give me a call. I am in the office all the time now. I am back in the office. So if you need to call me, I am here. Let's see, 2 final notes. How do you get these contracts? I am still on a pandemic sort of scheduled contracts, in that I am not doing the deal that I usually do, which is where I prepare everything at the beginning of the year and send it out to you. My protocol for this year is going to be to wait until you get your first request, and then I will send you contracts for every single one of your programs, regardless of what they requested. So once we've got that request for you, just expect me to send it out to you. There's someone on this call that I owe contracts to. I'm getting to it right after this meeting. You know who you are. And then the second note here is that the TA guide and resource documents are now available in the roster artist area, freshly updated for this year. So you can get that from our website. The password is teaching artist, all one word. And I believe the links to those directly might go out on a TA update coming soon to you. So just be aware that that is coming. And I think that's it for me, Tony.
Great, thank you. We're now going to have that breakout I just mentioned regarding those two sections, the school's COVID plans and contracting. Just have any kind of thoughts you might have or questions. We're going to change our names again to most align with whichever art form group you want to be a part of. Add a 1 to change your name for theater and drama, 2 for music, 3 for dance and movement, 4 for visual arts.
And while Tony's doing that, a little more context, there will be a staff member in each of the groups. If it's a question that we can easily answer, we'll answer it. But for the most part, we'll be recording everyone's questions so that we can send a follow-up kind of frequently asked document to everyone so that we're capturing that information for the full group and to folks who are not able to be here today and are listening to the recording. So know that your question might not be answered in this moment.
Yeah, I saw that additional question about liability insurance. And they can give a little bit more information on that when we come back as well. Or do you need me to vamp for a minute, Tony?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I'm going to vamp while talking about liability insurance, which is not a good vamp, but it is important information. So schools often require liability insurance for anyone who comes into their building as a contractor, to say that basically if somebody gets hurt during your workshop, that you have liability insurance that will cover you and pay out for damages for that, so that and that's protecting the contractor as well as the school. In the past, there's only been a few instances where the schools with young audiences have requested that. But it's important to remember that our liability insurance does not cover subcontractors. So all independent teaching artists should have their own liability insurance, which would protect you not just during a young audiences workshop, but during any kind of work or performance that you do. Those of you who are performing artists probably already have it, because most performing venues will require liability insurance as well. But Josephine has a list of options of ways of places that we know that teaching artists can get affordable liability insurance. And even though not all schools overtly ask for a copy of your policy, we do recommend that everybody has it for your own protection, for legal and financial protection. And if you have follow-up questions to that, we can talk about it in the small group, and I can give more detailed answers then.
And just to let you know, there are a large portion of visual artists here, so I put you into 2 separate groups, so you'd all have a little bit more time to talk. Also, right before I open it, I just want you to know that groups 2 and 3 only have 1 person each. So if you prefer to join another group, I can do that for you. You'll just need to let me know. I can. There'll be a staff member in there with you if you just want to have a one-on-one, or I can add you to another group. So if you are in the group 2 or 3, don't join yet, and just let me know, and I can change you. Otherwise, I'm going to open the rooms.
What was 3 again?
What if you're
multidisciplinary?
Okay.
What if you have 2 different disciplines that you work in?
It's really just the one you want to talk with right now.
Okay. All right.
So let's see. Albert, do you want to join a different group, or do you want your own?
I really don't care. Oh, I could go because the other one is theater, right?
Yeah,
Eh, and 3 is dance and movement.
right.
Put me where you want me. I don't care. Because I do movement and
All right. I'm gonna put you in group 1. You're number 1.
thank you. I shall join group 1 now.
Josephine, your office looks really big because of it being blurry. You look like you're in a very huge space.
My vast office.
Yeah, we gave Josephine the corner office.
Did you give it to her, or did she just take it because she knows how much work she does?
She's like, I'm coming in every day. I'm taking the office I want.
She really could take any room she wanted because she's the only one that's in every day.
Mhm.
You guys get the elevator and I get the office.
Well, she may be moving room to room anyways. You'd never know. Whenever one desk gets piled up, she just moves to a clean desk.
Just out in the middle on the couch, right?
Yeah, eventually couch. We're going through a little reorganization.
Office is going to look amazing.
Eventually.
Like next week. Yeah.
Amazing.
We're trying to find somebody who will pick up all of our old furniture.
Lauren, it's all yours.
It's all me. So we're doing a stretch break. We are going to take a 3, is that right, Tony? How many minutes did we say? 2-minute break, during which I encourage you to turn off your screen. I'm going to just talk us through a little stretching break, but you can use these 2 minutes however you need them to rejuvenate. So if you would like to start by resting your eyes, something that I like to do on a screen break is take a look at something that is 20 feet away. So looking out a window or across your apartment, just letting your eyes relax to that. You can give a little massage to the inside of the your eye cavity along your skull, a little massage to the side of your temples, just to relieve some of the strain of those ocular muscles. You can stretch your arms up, whether you're seated or standing, and let them expand outwards to your side, taking a breath in and filling your chest, and letting it out. Bend your neck to one side. Drop your chin to your chest. Bend your neck to the other side, letting your ear touch your shoulder. And then recenter your head, lift your shoulders up, drop them down, and up, drop them down, and stretch out your arms to the side or to the front, whatever's more comfortable, and move your wrists in circles. Get some blood flowing to those wrist muscles and in the other direction. And if you're in a space where you can stand up, you can spread your feet apart just a little bit and shift your hips all the way to the left. And then all the way to the right. Make a wide circle with your hips in one direction. And a wide circle in the other direction. If you're able, you can reach all the way up to the ceiling. Take a deep breath there. And as you exhale, slowly bend forward. Letting your head drop down between your arms. Your fingers reach towards the floor. Take a breath there. Bend over. And slowly start to stretch back up. Center yourself again. Take a deep breath in. Deep breath out. Just take a second to focus on your breath before we come back. And then we can all come back together.
Thanks, Lauren.
I have the wonderful job of talking to you about vaccination requirements. According to the Oregon Health Authority, COVID-19 vaccination is required for teachers and school staff. This includes volunteers and contractors. So that by being fully vaccinated means that you are 2 weeks past your second Pfizer or Moderna shot, or 2 weeks past your single Johnson & Johnson vaccination. And there are documented medical and religious exceptions for that as well. But for young audiences policy, we have decided that all of our staff and teachers who are interacting with young people through Young Audiences program will need to be vaccinated fully. This is not a fully vaccinated does not include booster shots. So if it comes to the point where the CDC would define fully vaccinated as including a booster shot, we will adjust accordingly. But until that point, it is just meaning 2 weeks past our your second shot of Moderna or Pfizer, first shot of Johnson & Johnson. Trey, can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So this is, we made this decision actually before the governor made the announcement that all school staff would need to be vaccinated, because we take really seriously the fact that most of our programming is working with unvaccinated children, and it's our responsibility to keep them as safe as possible. People who are not able to be fully vaccinated, whether it's from medical religious exemption or some other reason, are still eligible for remote or virtual work with young audiences, but not in-person work at this time. That is all I have to say about that. So if there are questions, we actually do have a moment to have some questions around that.
And I will just jump in to say that I think majority, if not all of the people on this call, have already done your vaccination status update with us. Thank you for doing that. We have not taken the time to, or we have not made it our policy to record cards at this time, because we assumed that schools would all be doing it differently. And so we just have recorded that we can say to schools, anyone that is offering programs in person is fully vaccinated, so that we're vouching for that. And then, as Josephine or as Kim mentioned earlier, you may still be asked to show your card when you go in to be in person directly with schools.
Yeah, and it's definitely possible that at some point, maybe PPS or one of the other larger districts will come up with a system where you scan your card online. I know right now some of the schools and PPS are starting to do that for parent volunteers. Once there is a platform that is being used to collect that, we'll share that information. But right now we are not aware of any. Any questions? Christy? Oh, yeah.
One of my biggest questions, actually, and it's really pertinent to this, because as Tony knows, we're hands-on with kids the whole way. Mask making, I mean, it's just paper mache and clay and or whatever sculpting medium you're using. So is there a place for guidelines about that kind of control, or has that been thought about? Because, I guess I look forward to the possibility of walking into a classroom and they might go, oh, no, those kids are not picking up that clay. They're not going to, handle that material. and that's just, it's a thought on my mind because my art form is very hands-on.
So hands-on, yeah. So what I would say is that that schools are working through this, and probably there is not, as far as I am aware of, school-wide policies around materials, or sorry, district-wide policies around materials. A lot of the schools are having kids have their own materials for different activities, but it is not, that policy is not comprehensive. And I think also the research has borne out that COVID-19 does not tend to be spread via surfaces, which is encouraging in that way. So I think that the most important thing to do in that situation is to have clear communication with the teacher whose classroom you're in and the school administration, if necessary, at the school sites that you're visiting, to ask around what procedures they have in place at that school. And if it does require additional materials, to include that in the budget.
And if there's anything that you want to make sure that the schools have access to information-wise ahead of time, share that with Josephine or Maya, and it can be added to your online profile that the teachers can read ahead of time. So if you have a personal COVID protocol that you want to say, like, students will need to be able to utilize shared materials, or if it's your personal COVID protocol that they're working in small groups of 5, or kind of whatever you want to set as your independent contractor self, to say that schools need to follow this rule for me in addition to me following the rules of the schools, that's something we can add to your profile. And it would be something you would discuss in a planning meeting once you get to that point.
What it seems to be, the most of the schools are defining contact as being within 3 feet for more than 15 minutes with a positive individual, which is actually kind of hard to do. So just to keep in mind that the policy at this point does not seem to be, for most of the schools, of considering everyone in the classroom with an with a positive case to be exposed, but only people who've been within 3 feet for 15 minutes or more. And that's why, 15 minutes total within 24 hours. Thanks, Jess. Yeah, and there's a lot of different information coming out right now. So having clear communication in the planning meetings is going to be really crucial. Knowing how that school and principal are defining close contact. And then also knowing how you would be notified if there was a contact in class, how you would notify if you ended up testing positive with a breakthrough case. The good thing is that if they're not like the chart that Christy showed, you would have to quarantine if you're close contact with somebody who tests positive, but then you would not, the people who you've been in contact with in that case would not need to quarantine unless you at that point test positive, if that makes sense. So it's not contacts of contacts.
And I do believe that if one is vaccinated, you do not have to quarantine.
That's what I thought too, except for that they are quarantining teachers in some cases. And I don't know if that's just if the teachers are symptomatic or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
The document we used for summer said that.
Yes.
So
yes, that is according to the CDC, is that, yes, that if you are vaccinated, fully vaccinated, that you do not need to quarantine unless you are symptomatic and test positive. Any other questions? And again, this is all, schools are still in the middle of figuring out what all of this means and looks like in practice. And so as they refine their procedures, we will keep you updated
Lauren,
as we're able.
if someone discovers they have a question later this evening or later in the week, who's the best person to contact?
I would say me or Christy. Probably Christy. I'll give you 20 words and Christy will give you 5, which will be much clearer. Yeah, me or Christy would be great. Great. Oh yeah, I do see a hand. Nikki and Peggy also. Okay, you have Nikki first and then Peggy.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just curious with the residencies. I don't know if you guys have numbers on this yet, but I guess I'm assuming the amount of absences will really be fluctuating. So I'm curious as to with residencies, if it's more of a goal to have it a session that is within itself versus sessions that are built upon each other because of the range of absences. But I don't know like how folks were going about that idea.
I haven't had any
question.
schools talk about that directly yet, at least for right brain schools where we've had some district level conversation. It's been more like business as usual.
Okay.
With the, I will put the one asterisk to that is everyone continues to really be strongly focused on social emotional learning and not being as worried about preparing for a math test, preparing for a language arts summative assessment. Everyone's really focused on community building, understanding emotions, processing stress.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, Nikki. I think during the summer, one of the things that we found was that for teaching artists who are able to have a project that is built on over time, but that if you miss a day, you can come back into it, seemed to be really successful. Just anecdotally, I have a 5th grader who's been home sick 3 days out of the last 2 weeks. It doesn't have COVID. It's just that if a kid has any symptom of anything whatsoever, we're being told to keep them home. So.
Yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Peggy, you had a question?
Yeah, so I just want to clarify. So if I have a specific COVID protocol that I would like to follow, for example, you know, how quickly I'd like to be notified if there's a positive case in my classroom, you know, in a room where I've been working. Is that something that I am free to clarify with a school and with a group of teachers that I'm working with? So if my protocol might be a little different than what the school's protocol is it appropriate for me to bring that up in a planning meeting and to inquire about it and to clarify it with that staff? Or is that something that I should just be following what the school's doing?
I would say that you can inquire about it and they will let you know if it's realistic. So
Okay.
your specific example may or may not be realistic.
Okay.
But something like having specific numbers in groups or group supplies or that kind of thing. And that's kind of what that extra box on the planning sheet for the contract is for, is if you have anything specific that you want to make sure they know is important to you, you are a partner in that contract. So it's important for you to be able to set your limits as well.
Okay.
And
Great.
Peggy, it may vary from district to district based on the county they are in.
Sure.
And I believe in Hillsborough, it's not the school district doing the notification. I believe they're handing it all off to the county. So even if you made a request to like a building principal, they may not be the right person.
Okay. Good to know. Thank you.
I just want to thank you all for your thoughtfulness and diligence around this subject. It's really challenging, I think, for all of us to just live in a world where the reality and data changes frequently, and we're all trying to keep ourselves safe and keep kids safe. So thank you for all of the attention that you're giving to this subject.
And I just want to say that Jess has just noted that generally speaking, if there's a kid who tests positive in the classroom, they'll not be told who it was for privacy reasons, but they would just tell you that someone from the classroom tested. Christy, are we ready to do the next one?
Yeah, my next piece is just kind of some information without specific information yet, but some goals that we have and about how we are hoping that we can get you all together in virtual and or in-person ways this school year. So in the past, we've been able to do some in-person conversations and social gatherings. We're still hoping to do some in-person social gatherings when we know a little bit more about what the school year will look like in terms of the Delta variant, et cetera. We were really hoping to do one this summer, and we got to a point where it was planned and we didn't share out the information yet because then Delta spiked and we just didn't feel comfortable doing that. So we're really hoping that that can still be the case, but we're unsure of when that will happen. We're planning to keep our professional development and our conversations virtual. We've found that for the most part, it's been really helpful to eliminate barriers of transportation, of childcare, of parking downtown, and it allows people to come in and out a lot more easily. So that's something that even when we go back to a more in-person functional time period, we're still planning to keep a lot of like the conversation pieces that we're having with artists virtual. And so those might be things like this, where we're bringing information from YA to you all to ask for your input and questions. It means that we have the opportunity to add more things. So if you have a specific question or a conversation topic, if you would like to gather a group of artists to talk about something in particular, if you're having an issue and you want to get some feedback from others, we can be the hub of inviting folks and arranging that if you want to lead a virtual conversation as well. So we wanted to throw that out there, which is a little bit different than what we've said in the past. I think it's always kind of been an option, but it's just easier now to be able to schedule conversations where people can come without that barrier of transportation or parking or childcare, et cetera. So that's another thing that we're hoping to do. You see this great picture of Maya on the slide. That came from our first headshot opportunity. A photographer on our roster, M. Martinez, did amazing job with all of the headshots. You all who came looked so good. I think the lighting that she used was great. And so I wanted to show you an example. Maya's not here to see that I'm using her picture, so hopefully that's okay. But show you an example that it went really well, and we would like to be able to host another one of those again. So once Maya gets back up and running, we were hoping to do one more before the end of the calendar year and probably an additional one in the spring, just to give you all the chance to get some pictures. Some individuals brought in props to showcase kind of the type of artwork that they do, or the type of music that they do, or the type of theater that they do. Some just brought themselves and dressed in a way that showed off their best colors, or kind of a little bit more about what they like to present to the world. But I was really impressed with the headshots themselves. I will plan to get some next time because Maya looked so great in this one. Why not? So social gatherings, hopefully in person, coming soon. Headshot opportunity would also obviously be in person, hopefully coming soon. Both of those a little bit unknown. Virtual conversations, you will probably see another kind of artist conversation come up in the fall. Let us know if you want to present any. I'm going to read that question in just a moment. The last thing on there is that in the spring, the last 2 years, we've done some consultation work with AV Cultural Drivers, which is Nelda Reyes, who's a teaching artist who's been on our roster. She's specifically been helping us work through questions and conversations around equity and around anti-racism in the way that we support both students and artists, and also in the way that we function as a team internally. So we're still planning to do some work with her again this coming spring. It's been a really positive thing to have her as a partner in that conversation. We've taken the reports from her meetings the last 2 springs and used those kind of in our planning for the year with our programs team and with our Greater Equity Committee for our organization. So that's our thought this year. The question that we have from the chat, should we send a headshot if we couldn't make the photo session with the fabulous M. Martinez? We don't necessarily need any shots from you. If you want to update the pictures that are on your profile on the website, please be in contact with Josephine or with Maya about that, and they can update those for you. We just wanted to offer the option to have headshots for folks who don't have good examples of themselves as teachers or themselves as professionals. Any other questions about this before we move to the next piece? All right, let's go to the next slide then. The other piece that I have a chance to talk to you all about is the fact that among the many communications you've gotten from us, one of the things that we shared with you earlier this year was the Young Audiences Equity Statement. And whenever we're sharing things with you via email, there's always a little bit more context to them. So since we have the opportunity to talk to some more of you face-to-face, kind of, we wanted to give a little bit more context for that, for why we shared that this year, and kind of where we're going with that. So we shared the equity statement with you earlier this year. We asked you to kind of sign off on that, to essentially say, we recognize that this is what this organization is doing. We want to continue to partner with this organization. So the context around that is that that statement was put together after a group of staff and board members went through a pretty comprehensive self-assessment process of our own internal practices, of the way that we work with partners, of the way that we function as an organization. And it is, and I will repeat this multiple times, just the beginning of the work. As with all work around equity and anti-racism, it is ongoing work. As we continue to learn, we will continue to make adjustments. As the world continues to adjust, we will continue to make adjustments, and we will continue to learn. So the statement itself that you had access to and read starts with the words, "We, the staff and board of Young Audiences." We recognize that you are all independent contractors, and so realistically, if we as staff and board are making these decisions for ourselves, that's not necessarily saying that those are your words. So when we ask you to read through it, know that we are aware of that, and that those are kind of promises that we are making to ourselves. And I want to give you a little bit of context as well, in that there's kind of 4 steps. So after the self-assessment, we created a definition for ourselves so that we knew what we were talking about when we said the word equity. We knew what we were talking about when we talked about anti-racism. The second step, the piece that you saw, was the statement, which is essentially Young Audiences staff and board commitment to these areas. The third section being a policy, which is kind of a series of bullet points that are more evergreen. So for example, Young Audiences will compensate vendors of color when providing services to our artists. Or I don't have anything specific in my brain right now, but something that doesn't have specific numbers attached to it, but it is kind of the larger umbrella heading for a group. So that's we went definition, statement, policy, the fourth being the equity plan. And the goal with that is to go through our policy, look at all of those different umbrella statements, and then make specific quantitative or qualitative goals around those different areas to hold ourselves accountable. And so that might be a specific percentage of schools that we want to serve that are high POC student population, or it might be a specific percentage of vendors that we want to work with in a given year that are Black or women-owned business, et cetera, wide variety of different things. So the reason that we shared the statement with you all this year is because that is essentially the values that we are claiming as an organization. And I will echo again that it is not done, and we will continue to adjust it, and we will continue to learn more. But we asked you all to read through it so that you can kind of sign off on it, see what resonates with you. And our goal in the future is to expand our value statements to include statements from our artists as well. But that will take some more work, and that will take some interaction with our artists. And we don't have, to be honest, a specific plan in place for what that will look like. So in this moment, I am going to share in the chat.
I got it.
Tony's going to share in the chat a link to the statement again. It will open up your own copy. So it is not a copy that is shared with anyone else. So if you want to take 5 minutes, we're going to leave some time to turn off cameras to read through it. We want to make sure that you have time to read through it. Mark it up if you want to mark questions about words or phrases that are most resonating with you, or any questions that it brings up for you. We're going to give you that time kind of individually, and then we'll do some breakout groups to be able to discuss some of those things, anything that you feel comfortable discussing. Or if there's just things that you want to keep in your own space, that's totally fine as well. We wanted to offer both the individual and group conversation time around this. So it is 4:34 right now. So at 4:39, we will come back together and then break into breakout groups. But feel free to turn off your camera and your mute for the time being.
Hello, everyone. Christy, I believe we're back.
All right, thank you. One quick note on that last section before we move on from that. If you have anything that you would like us to follow up on, if you have any questions you want us to address, feel free to still add those to the Jamboard, or you can email us separately. The Jamboard, one of the things about that is that it allows comments or questions to be anonymous. So if you wanted to share something that you weren't comfortable putting your name behind, you can use a Post-it note and we will not be looking at, or we will not see who posted what. So that will stay available. We'll use it with tomorrow morning's group as well. So if you think of something else that you wanted to add, or if there was a piece of the conversation that came up that you want to make sure that we're aware of, please feel free to add that. And then to wrap up today, I just wanted to share 3 action items with you all because it wouldn't be a Young Audiences meeting if we weren't asking you to do something. So 3 different things. The first one, we mentioned the YA Artist Guide and the YA Artist Resources earlier. Kim mentioned those, Josephine mentioned them. They are essentially like the YA handbook. So it's information about how we operate, policies and procedures, things that hopefully are all familiar to you. We really have not made any big changes to those documents this year, but we want to make sure that people have access to them and read them at least once a year. So I'm going to share, nope, Josephine just shared in the chat where you can find those on the website and the password to get into that section. We'll ask that in the next week or so, you take the time to read through those and let us know if you have questions, let us know if you have concerns, let us know if you have anything that comes up and resonates. At this point, we're providing you with that resource, and then we're going to put it on you to actually be the ones to interact with it and take a look at it. The second piece is that once a year, we send out a demographic survey. And this is so that we have recorded how people self-identify, so that if we get, for example, a funding opportunity or a request from a school or something that comes in where a school says that they would like to work with someone who is a native Spanish speaker, if they say they would like to work with someone who identifies as a BIPOC teaching artist, etc., or if we have funding that supports that, we don't want to make assumptions about how you identify. So that's why we send out that demographic survey, so that we have that information on file for all of you, and that is an individual survey. So when you get that information, much like the vaccination status, it will be a personalized link so that when you fill it out, it's attached to your profile. So I'm letting you know this information will also be in the email that comes out, but that particular one is not an anonymous survey. Oftentimes demographic surveys are. We have an anonymous demographic survey that goes along with it as well. But there is an individual link where we ask for you to self-identify so that we have that information. Whenever we do that, there's also the option to opt out. So just know that that is coming soon. In the next week or so, we will be sending out that demographic information survey. And because it's individual passwords, or I'm sorry, because it's individual links to surveys, each member of an ensemble would need to fill that out separately. So if you are a manager of a performing group, or if you are a manager of an ensemble that teaches together, make sure that each of your teaching artists that work with us fills that out. And we will hopefully get as much information from you as we can. And then, as I mentioned before, I think that everyone on this call has already done the vaccination status piece, but if you have not done that, that one has more of a, a repercussion to it, in that if we do not have your vaccination status updated as current, we will not promote your work as in person. We will only promote virtual. So that is so that we can promise to schools that everyone that we are promoting as in-person work is up to date on their vaccination status. So 3 action items for you all. That concludes at exactly 5 p.m. our conversation today. Way to go being on time. So shout out to Tony for stage managing this whole thing and working with all of the links and all of the back end pieces. I can at least speak for myself, and that I'll stay on for another 5 minutes or so if anyone wants to stay on and has any questions or wants to talk anything through. But this is the end of our scheduled program. Thank you all for being here. It's really great to see faces, even if they're little Zoom boxes.